us tonight. If you could please take a moment to silence your cell phones if you brought them, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. If you purchased a $5 ticket, you should have received a voucher that you can use on any purchase this evening. Of course, we encourage you to use it on a purchase of our featured title tonight. But just a quick reminder that it is through book sales that we are able to provide the programming we're known here for at Village Books. I want to make sure you're all aware of some of the awesome events we have coming up. Join us in the Readings Gallery on Thursday for a live group reading of 2023's Winterfest short stories at 6 p.m. The theme is Midwinter Night's Dream. You can find out more about this and other upcoming events at villagebooks.com. And now to introduce our special guest this evening, Kelly Magee, Chair of the Department of English at WW.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for coming out on this wet, rainy night. I am going to introduce Dr. Alassane Abdoulaye, who is an assistant professor and head of the Department of English at the Université Virtuelle in Dakar, Senegal. He is taught in the Senegal program affiliated with Western on a number of occasions, was a speaker in the Western Black History Month series that the English department sponsored a few years ago, and is currently a visiting professor in the English department teaching classes for us for the fall. He is an accomplished scholar and professor and the author of this beautiful book, The Power of Peace and Love, an African Tale of Wisdom. So he's going to read a little bit from the book, and I'm going to sit down, and then I'll come back up and ask a few questions, and we'll have a conversation. And then if you all have questions, I think we'd be happy to hear those as well. So please help me welcome Dr. Dia.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you all for coming. Good evening. It's my pleasure, really it's my great pleasure. I would like at the very beginning to express my deep sense of gratitude to the Village Book Institution, the whole community of Bellingham and Western Washington University, particularly my colleagues from the Department of English and other friends from other departments. So really thank you very much. So thank you, Kelly, for this nice introduction. And this book, as you may have read already, the title is The Power of Peace and Love, an African Tale of Wisdom. The subtitle is very interesting, An African Tale of Wisdom. Maybe anyone familiar with West African folktales may have read a tale like this, but not exactly the same. Just to tell you what is the inspiration of that. Because people of my generation or people older than me or little bit younger than me who sometimes, were introduced to the African oral tradition, at least were sometime in their, childhood at the fireplace to listen to old people recounting tales. It's the occasion on which I had the chance to hear once somebody recount a tale during a cultural watch. And that was a long time ago, 20 years ago. And later I started writing a story from that. The first time I started, it was that tale. It was simply maybe in 2 or 3 pages that I wanted to publish in a magazine that when I was a second-year student, but it was not very successful. And then later on, the inspiration came when I grew up and became a scholar, and then I was very much engaged in reading and writing. I read a lot. I decided to extend it and make a big story. So you will see there is a kind of micro story, and also there is a kind of, the whole story of the novel. That one is about love. If you read between a couple, it is, the hero is Ngendi, and the woman is Mugi. When you take the first page, it reads like, once upon a time, there was a pretty young woman called Mugi. Her parents used to live in a big village in the middle of nowhere, as remote areas are oftentimes done. Mugi is said to have been to have a marvelous love story, as no one could imagine to what extent such a fabulous love story could lead a man. And you will have a short description of who she is exactly. Regarded as a vision of loveliness, she graces the world with her enchanting presence. Blessed with ethereal beauty, her charm knows no bound. Her youthful grace is accentuated by her elegance, and she moves through life like a gentle breeze, leaving an indelible mark of enchantment. Her eyes, like deep pools of mystery, hold a wisdom that belies her youth, with a smile that could rival the stars in brightness. She radiates and captivates, or leaving hearts captivated in her wake. And then you continue, that's the do we know about Magee. But you will not understand until you continue so much. Her story is not very much known because there is a lot of things hidden inside. She know her story from griots. It's traditional historians in Africa. Griots are traditional historians. They have not been educated, formally to be in this university, but they are traditional, communicators who tell the story to the people. And she learned her history from these people who tell her there is something hidden that she did not know. Because she is a symbol of resilience, because her great-grandfathers were leaders of the neighborhood, of the villages. There was a dynasty, and that dynasty, that's an ethnic tribe that was called the Bulo. One thing important is the Bulo does not exist anywhere. It's just created, it's something I have invented. And then, that's the little things she knows about the history, but she is a descendant of a horrible chief named Chief Dagoso. So I continue and they say, the story is what griots, the traditional historians, usually tell to the local people and even tourists who come at their risk for visits in times of cultural festival. Tourists were very uncommon during the reign of Chief Dagoso because he had forbidden foreigners to come to the areas. He was so strict and used his tough army to repress anyone who was revealed to have tried to do so. So he was a very bad leader. He was a xenophobic leader. He did not want, so he was somebody very greedy who liked power. So it's dangerous when tourists come, when externals come to the village, they may take his power. And then later on, you will see Magee knows little about her own history. But she has to know what is a tree that hides the forest. And what happens later is that she needs to understand what exactly is the main problem. And as I said, unfortunately, every power would end, be it mystically or politically. And at this level of the story, you will see that probably you will think of leadership in Africa. That's leadership crisis. It could be a fictional representation of any country in Africa that has been in such situation of crisis. And what happened is there was a civil war. So her great-grandfathers led the community, the villages, the province. They call it the Bulo province. Even the name Bulo province did not exist. It had a different name. Her great-grandfather, Chief Dagoso, renamed it Bulo province. That's to show a kind of ethnic primacy. And then, rough leadership. And what is important in this is that you will know things will change in the course of history. You will be introduced to other, powerful characters, among whom, for example, Turo Bungali. Turo Bungali is in a different village. And then Turo Bungali is totally the opposite of Chief Dagoso, who is a very bad leader. So what happened? How should people know the story of Magee? So when things happen, the terrible things happened really. So there was a kind of attack. So there were so many repeated, uprisings, demonstration, denouncing bad leadership, kind of xenophobia against people and foreigners. And then they decided to overthrow Chief Dagoso, and there was a night attack. And then Chief Dagoso was kind of killed in this horrible thing. It was a kind of civil war. It was bloodshed. And during that night, two symbolic people left. The future husband of Magee is Ngendi. Ngendi left that village and he ran away. He was serving in the army. And then Magee's mother, who is Maka, ran away, went to another village. And unfortunately, she was caught by two terrible guys who kidnapped her. She was raped, and unfortunately, she became pregnant. It is this baby that is going to become the movie that is introduced in the novel. And later on, she grows and becomes adolescent. So, and the two bad guys, what they did, they kidnapped the baby and they abducted it. They killed the mother. And then they wanted to bring the baby to a different place that is called Panawa Island. And Panawa Island is a very peaceful village. That is a village where Turo Bungali is leading. And Turo Bungali is a very nice leader, totally different from Chief Dagoso, who is a very bad one. And then when the bad guys were denounced, what they did, they were arrested by the police. And at that time, Bugi did not have any name. And he decided to rename, now to give a name to the baby. He convened a representative group in the community that is called the Council of Advisors. And the Council of Advisors are very wise men who come and collaborate with him, and they make very healthy decisions, and they make good options for the community. And that's how he renamed Mbugi. He gave that name to Mbugi. And then later on, Mbugi grew and she became a big lady, and nobody tried to date her or to have any relationship. It's because people started, stigmatizing, saying, oh, it's dangerous. This lady is a descendant of the terrible leader. So they started having these stereotypes, so she's being stigmatized. And then she one day decided, why does it come that she was she's offspring of the former leader, even if that one is a bad one. But she is a symbol of, Renaissance. She is a symbol of regeneration. She is a symbol of beauty. Why are men so afraid of her? And then she said to Robungali that she wants to organize a kind of feast to invite everybody. I needs to, lay the ground for a good gentleman to come and date her. And then she organized a big feast. People came to the village. It was at night. And the big gentleman that would be her husband, it is Ngendi. Ngendi came in the night. It was kind of self-service, and they started eating, drinking. Unfortunately, Ngendi did not come across, a meal. She came across a symbolic, plate in which there was uncooked meat and some leaf of baobab tree and 3 slices of mala. That's typically a cultural code. And from that, initiated people can know what are exactly the origin of the name. And later on, he interpreted very much this story. And one day, he just came to pay visit to Mbugi. And then Mbugi started realizing that things are changing. So he came and said, how come? How do you know where I sleep? Nobody has known where I spend the night. So it means that Mbugi should understand that this guy is very much initiated. He is wise, he knows that. And so they started their love story. They became married, but still they did not feel very comfortable in the community because they are foreigners. And as the people say, as the saying goes, home is sweet home. They even decided one day to leave the country and to leave the land and go to the motherland or find somewhere better. And then, as I told you, I introduced you to Turo Bungali, who is a very nice leader. And then Turo Bungali said, now that you are among the people, we should think of peace building and forget all about the past. If people really know your own history, you may be exposed, they may try to kill you or something like that. And we don't want people to understand that thing. But we will manage it in a very different way. And then they organized, for the first time after the terrible civil war, a kind of cultural festival in order to reconciliate, to heal the past. And then during that feast, he will take the occasion to announce that officially these two people are recognized as permanent residents of the land, and they are going to grant them with a plot of land in order for them, to be able to till the land and earn a living. And that's how they integrated, and they felt really they are part of the community. And then they were very much thriving. They tried to develop, a lot of things, and they integrated. They got full integration. So it became a very inclusive leadership, And then Turo Bungali also is a strong leader who teaches nonviolence and who preaches people to forget about the past and not to be kind of self-centered or ethnocentric or xenophobic to other people. And he tried to promote the philosophy of Ubuntu, which is typically African, me, we. I am because I belong to. And then they realized that they are much more, interested, and the community is a very hospitable one. And things continued. And then Magee told his husband that it would be interesting that you integrate this community. I know you are somebody great. The proof is that you did not know me. Nobody know my history. The way you did to understand who I am and to get in touch with me, to discover me, shows that you are a man of genius, and I know you are a good leader. And then he said that would be nice. He would be able to continue to work with the folks. And he was around 41. He became an elderly man, a very nice of his age, and he was promoted and nominated member of the Council of Advisors. And the Council of Advisors for the first time received a big gentleman who could think of the future. He too was moved by love, the power of love, the power of peace. And then he said, okay, it will be very nice also to sensitize the neighboring villages, even if the province is now divided. Some stand alone, others do not want to reconcile anymore because they think the future will be totally bleak. And he said it would be very nice to sensitize the people. And Turo Bungali told him, why not, in this coming edition of the festival, why not take you as a big lecturer? You will talk to the people. And he said, okay, that would be very nice. He also grew and became a writer. He was writing plays to sensitize people about the bad past and the dark past that really divided them. And then what happened is they had to organize a cultural festival during which he will be giving a lecture, a talk, and the talk should be the power of peace of love, to help people reconcile, to help people come together. And when he was kind of organizing things and going around villages and mobilizing his performers, he went to one village. Unfortunately, he came across two bad guys who tried to attack him. So it means the conflict is going to rise again. And then these two guys, tortured him, and they attacked him, and they threw him in a well. But the well was not so deep. And then they were trying to go to the village and attack his wife. And when they went there, there were two guys, symbolically. One of them was in fair complexions, another one is dark. And then they went there, and he told them, I will tell you something. If you go there, I would ask my wife to kill the black sheep and let there the white sheep. He had two sheep. And when they went there, they said that. So it means that when they go there, it was to give a message to her, to Magee, that he had to, stop. It was meant to kill, but she did not kill. To kill the dark guy and to let the other one. So it was a kind of message. And when they arrived at the village, when they just said that, it was a stupid message, they should have said. And she went to her room, she brought a pistol, and she shot the other guy in the legs. And then she called the Council of Advisors, they came and they arrested him. So in a nutshell, that's what and then you will see it has become a very nice story at the end. And the story started and it became a kind of legend that this kind of couple is a very wise one. And at the end of the novel, it is like this. When she did it, I don't want to keep reading too long. He concluded that, but the conference didn't happen. because there was a kind of instability again, and they deemed it necessary to postpone it for century. And then the end was kind of the power of peace and love is in the wisdom of those who know how to build it and how to carry it. That's the end of the story. There are many things that are related to love, but as I told you, the main story is about leadership, is about crisis, is about, reconciliation. Thank you for your attention.
I'll come back up now and start us off with a couple of questions, and then if you all have some, be happy to take those. Thanks for that. You didn't read so much. That was like a summary of the book, which was great. It went all the way through the end, and one of my questions was about the ending, but I didn't want to do a spoiler, so I'm glad you did that. Because the ending is so interesting of this book, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that. It's an optimistic ending, but not completely, because the bad guys, as they're called, they get sent to prison, so they are caught and punished. But also, the cultural festival has to be canceled, and so it's not a purely happy ending. And I wonder about your choice to end the book that way, what inspired that ending? I'm always really interested in endings anyway and how people find them.
Yes, thank you for your question. It's very interesting. To me, yes, you can say the ending is not very happy, as it's not very sad. It is in the middle. But from my perspective, it is happy. Because you have to take it from where it began. So the thing was to give a ray of hope to the people. To think that, to believe that their future is bright, is not as bleak as they may think. At least as sometimes there is, I think you're familiar with an African writer, very famous one, Chinua Achebe, who says that writers do not give, how can I say, prescriptions, they just give, headaches. And they don't give also, they don't give solutions. They just give a prescription. They give a headache and a prescription. It's up to you now to find a solution. And I think in my understanding, the ending is not very much positive. There is something sad. But the most interesting thing has already been got for the people. At least they understand that there is a big change. There is a new wind that is blowing. So the past that was very dark and very terrible is going to be healed by the new leadership and the new generation. And one important thing also is that some people suspected that this guy was just feigning something. So he wants to overthrow the new leader and take it, because no one could realize that somebody being an ally of a very terrible leader could change so totally and so positively to come and influence people. There is a kind of half doubt also, so the ending could not be 100% positive. I think it would be very even confusing in the mind of readers.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I wonder too about your description in the beginning of the hero of this book. Because I think there are many heroes of this book, and I was interested in that too. And as you were just describing, Mbuki is the one who decodes the message at the end and sort of vanquishes the bad guys, and I don't know, she seems a lot like a hero.
Ngendi is the hero and Mbuki is the heroine.
Yeah, who do you consider to be the hero, or do you agree that there are multiple heroes here?
I will join you, as you said, there are many heroes. There are many heroes. Yeah, there are many. Because it's not a kind of gender issue saying, I know when you share the story with the public, maybe women will say, oh, the woman is more powerful than the man, and men will say, oh, the man is more powerful. And I remember when I wrote the tale, at the end I asked the question, who do you think is the most, who do you think is the most intelligent? It was not a good question. I remember that was, a very young boy just writing a story. And then I said, I'm sure when people read the novel, they read the novella, they will be interested in arguing around gender. So it was a kind of balance and make it a little bit different from maybe works that try to portray women as being secondary, being, very weak characters. Excuse me for that, but it's not the case here. It's a little bit balanced. You cannot say that the guy is the best. You cannot say that the woman also is the best. We will equally appreciate it in terms of heroism, I think.
Yeah, I think there's even an argument to be made that the community itself is a hero too, like the collective. And
Yeah.
you were just referring to that Ubuntu, I am because you are, that idea seems to really go throughout this whole book. And there are definitely times where it's certainly less about the individuals than it is about the collective, I think.
Yeah, definitely, that's the case. There is also a kind of collective memory. If you take, for example, a big leader like Turo Bingoli, he too is a hero, we can say. He is, the symbol of, good leadership. He is the symbol of charisma, Ubuntu leader, the kind of leaders that maybe people of Africa need, but still do not have. Even in history, we know that many leaders in Africa have been negatively criticized, but there are exceptionally some good ones. At least Nelson Mandela is a world legend. He unanimously is appreciated. So we can say that leaders like Turo Bongali here have this. So it is kind of collective memory. Even if there are so many bad things in the box, there are at least some small, positive things that you can appreciate and that can catch, the attention of people to give it a kind of collective representation.
Do you all have some questions for Alassane?
One of the things that is sort of striking, if you're a Westerner, one of the things that's sort of striking about this tale is there's really no resolution at the end. It's as if the story is ongoing and we're waiting for another chapter. Is that typical of this kind of tradition?
Thank you for your question. It's very interesting. If you take the subtitle of the book, it's A Tale of Wisdom. You may say that there is no resolution, but from the perspective of the tale, there is a kind of indirect resolution because the main cause of the evils, I think, have been in a certain way managed and healed and something like that. So the ending is just a kind of perspective. Things are not definitely the same, the last solution to the problem, but it is a whole perspective of what it could be. It's kind of riddle at the end. What have you taken from the story? If it is totally positive, I think she asked me the question. She thinks it's not so much positive as it's not so much negative, but it is in the middle. So it is from this middle that maybe you have to analyze the resolution. The resolution relates much to what happened in the past and how much progress they have achieved and how far they can go with their future. It's also up to readers also to maybe have these kind of considerations. I should forget about being so much defensive. It's not very interesting. It's the work of art. Each person has their own appreciation of what it is. I'm gonna forget my role as a critic, but just act as a writer. But I think the solution is in the perspective. Yes.
What was your favorite scene to write?
Say it again.
What was your favorite scene to write and why?
What was my favorite scene? I think it was to think of what is going on in Africa over the last years. if you're familiar with the history of West Africa, I'm glad to have somebody here from West Africa who knows what is going on. And when he reads this book, probably he will, point out a lot of things that relate to the reality of the continent. There is a lot of instability. There are a lot of things related to war, to leadership crisis and everything. And automatically, as somebody very passionate about leadership, I consider myself as a change maker. And I think that's my contribution in another way, in an indirect way of helping educate the people, to let them know of what could be a kind of solution to our problems, but it could also be extended to other problems. This conflict can be localized in Africa, but it can also be related to any other issue. Even if the scene is Africa, I said in West Africa, if you read, but it's a kind of parable that can be related to everything. Thank you for your question. Yes.
I was wondering, so you were talking about how you heard a tale told when you were quite young, and that was one of the sources of inspiration. And so you come from a very particular experience, very particular, not country, but not just country, but part of Senegal and an ethnic community. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more, maybe describe for us your village, where you come from, give us something about the context from which this tale emerges.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, Christopher. It's a very interesting. Yes, I think also, this is a very interesting question, and it relates to the context I shared with you at the very beginning. Because as I told you, that's very common in Africa. People maybe of my generation, not very old, just I was born in the early 1980s in the northern part of Senegal, in the rural area, in some urban zone. It's not even suburban, it was really rural. And at the time, people still continued having this kind of cultural watch, having this kind of pop culture, folk culture, telling tales in the night. Because in the night there was nothing special, there was no electricity. If there is no electricity, where will you have to go? Apart from being in the house with a kind of palm oil lamp, and apart from that, it's just maybe having the fire. And there's people who start, what we have to do, you guys, you have to figure out. And we said, oh, why don't we start telling tales? And we tell tales, but these are not tales really, these are kind of jokes most of the time. But if you want to hear very nice stories, we hear them from elderly people, very wise people who tell us very nice tales, and those tales they tell us are different from the tales we usually tell. We tell very funny tales, but the tales they tell us are full of knowledge, are full of wisdom and moral lessons. You learn a lot from them. It's kind of typical tradition of the school. That's where it started, and it was a kind of cultural night, as I told you, and I heard a very nice guy talking about wisdom, talking about leadership, talking about charisma, talking about stability. And it was a kind of communal activity, kind of festival. So there were many different tribes, there were many different villages that came and joined, and he profited from that. And conflict happens everywhere. And when I listened to him, I automatically understood that what he was telling, it relates to some way or another to some villages that once maybe were in conflict in the past, but now feel very comfortable with their present and that have reconciled. I even heard in the past that my village once was in conflict with another village. But that's in the past. And in the present, there is no problem. They are in very good terms. There is a lot of reconciliation. All this inspired me maybe to materialize this kind of folk culture, this kind of cultural treasure in something that is much more sustainable and that can help generations learn from the informal way I have learned, but in a more, instructive way that it could be, in which is in the domain of fiction. So that's why even you see there are a lot of proverbs that I have used, local proverbs or sometimes French proverbs, which I did not translate, just to let you know that there is a kind of reflection of the local color. And this local color is related to the folk culture. Just briefly, I was a rural boy. I grew in a rural area, and I love very much telling these stories and reading a lot about pop culture. Thank you.
Can I jump in really quick to ask about your choice as a writer to use an invented place instead of one of the real places that you know? What was behind that choice?
Yeah, I think the rationale behind that, it is not only artistic, but also strategic, to avoid maybe censure, to avoid being taxed with. It happened that a lot of writers wrote very committed book. I know I'm a very committed person. I can tell the truth as it is. It doesn't mean that I didn't tell the truth. But if I try to put a lot of things more concretely, probably some would say that, okay, he is saying this directly while it's not that. I remember a very nice novel that I read in African literature. It is Until of the Savannah by Julia Achebe. And there is an interesting comment from Doris Lesser, who says that any African leader leading a country in danger should read this book. That's a comment. So it is set in a fictional, state that is called Kangan. Kangan does not exist on the African map. You cannot find Kangan. But some critics said that if you, like in Resana City, if you make a lot of comparison, probably Kangan would be Nigeria. But I would not take the risk of saying this village is this or is that. It's just fictional, and I want it to be that. So that's why I said to be more representative and more symbolic. Maybe somebody who read some conflict in the Middle East or in the US could try to identify. It should be kind of, a medication for everyone, but not only a prescription for Africans, because leadership crisis, I think, exist all over the world. Even if Africa is the most hit, there are some parts of the world also that needs to read or know something about leadership crisis. Thank you for your question.
Others from you all? I thought I had seen another hand before.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how long it took you to write this.
That's an interesting question. And the answer will be not easy. I told you I wrote it first when I was second year student. I think I should keep that, maybe it is in my luggage home. It was just in 2 pages. The whole tale, I transcribed it in 2 or 3 pages, and I wanted to publish it in a magazine. And then maybe it was not selected, and then I said, okay, maybe it was not a good one. No worry, I will take time, and I kept it in my luggage. Imagine how many years. That was in 23. That was in 23, when I was a second year student at university. And later on, when I graduated from university, I received my PhD in 2016, and I had extremely read. I have read a lot of things. I write criticism, I do a lot of things. And then 2017, 2018, I said, okay, I have to write something. I started a play, and I was not very much interested in a play, and I stopped. I said, okay, I'm going to write something that is connected. And I remember, if you read even the preface, it is done by one of my professors, and I really have to thank her. It is Professor Omafalabo Ajayi Soyinka, who is the sister of famous African writer, first Nobel Peace Prize, Wale Soyinka, who was a professor of comparative literature and who taught me comparative literature. And her classes of comparative literature, it is related to what Christopher said, were very much related also to Yoruba mythology. And she used to ask us in class also to share our own culture and our mythology, something like that. And I think, okay, she have introduced me to a range of interesting, works. And I should get back, to get my kind of story and bring it back and try to improve it, recreate it, and reinvent it. Maybe anybody who has read it would say, okay, this is a West African tale, or in the Fulani side, but they will see the extension, so I had to find a lot of things. And maybe one challenging thing, and a question I have not yet received, if I were initiated in creative writing, and that would be no. That's why it took a lot of time for me. You cannot wake up one day and try to write a novel. And I started to figure out that those who write probably, attended, English department abroad or somewhere, and they took a lot of courses in creative writing. That's why I was very much amazed when I came to Western. I see that a huge number of students are creative writing majors. And I did not know that the big lady next to me is a creative writing, expert. And that's the first thing I said to Kelly, oh, it is very nice. Maybe if I grew here in Bellingham, I would have written more than 10 books. But I grew in a different setting. That's why I came up with only one thing that has taken more than, 10 years or something like that. Thank you for your question.
What a thing it is, though. Kind of related to that, we were talking just before this began about your audience. And I noticed in the introduction, the writer talking about potentially using this book for educational purposes, that this could be for people who are learning English. But I was also struck by this couple of lines, it's on page 21. It says, according to old African people, griots in the African tradition are cobblers of holes. They never bring conflict, they rather calm it down with sophisticated means of communication through cultural diplomacy and rhetoric overall. And I thought that was such a good description of what this book is doing also. So I wonder if you could also talk about, this is sort of jumping off the question about how long it took you and also your favorite scenes and things like that, but to talk about the language itself and how you came to the writing style that you developed for this book.
Yeah, thank you for your interesting question. Yeah, I think the style, even my former professor, Professor Soyinka, asked me that when she was drafting the preface. Why did I choose this kind of style? I think, okay, number one thing is I'm an educator, I'm a writer, and I'm a teacher. So maybe my style will be a teacher-writer. In teaching, there is something but matters, which is pedagogy. So if you teach complicated things to kids, they will understand hard what you mean. So maybe also in creative writing, it depends. People have to. There are some very, complex stories to read, very complex styles, difficult. That was not my option. And I said also, I am in a French-speaking country, but where English is used more effectively, students and others, okay, as a former ESL teacher, English as a second language, I would say I would love, emerging students in the French-speaking zone to love to read stories and to build confidences in writing. That's why this style is much a bit kind of, a gift for them. Yeah, to invite them to read and to help them build confidence. When they read, they can read the novella very confidently and understand what it is about, not being very much challenged by the style. I'm sure if today they had to read many Native American writers or African Anglophone writers, it would be very hard for them. That's one thing. And also maybe something related to the griots and everything, yes. That's typically, as I said, the local color writing. That's the local color line. It's kind of local color. I wanted to put a lot of ingredients, a lot of things that reflect the rich African culture. Sometimes many people hear only negative things from Africa, but we're very proud of what we are, and we are very proud of what we have achieved so far. Because however dark the past is, or however dark the present may be considered, or however dark the future may be predicted, we still are very confident that there is a way forward. And there are a lot of interesting things. Culture is like that, very hard to appreciate. Sometimes it's typically personal and very relative, but a lot of things inside. That's the whole heritage, that's the whole treasure. And if you see people like the griots, who are kind of, cultural communicators, and I say they are cobblers of all sorts, it means when there is a conflict, sometimes you see even the leader, the authority may not decide to go and automatically seize the problem and try to find solution. He or she can resort to these wise men who communicate very much, very well and very effectively to talk to the people. They use, even in terms of style, in a very, good way of speaking, full of rhetoric, of cultural imagery to, make everyone feel inside. So all these are reasons for why I have used this very, very style to catch the attention of everyone, either any internal reader who could be an African, or any external reader who could be an American or a British or a European or whatever. Thank you.
Any other questions from you? Yeah.
In writing a story that directly reflects what you've experienced in life, is there a character or characters that you would relate to people you know in life or to yourself?
I did not put autobiographical figures inside. I kept a little bit distance from what happened. But if you take the characters' ways of speaking somewhere, these reflect many people, as she mentioned in her question. I have met on occasion of cultural festivals or something. Very, wise people who have not been educated. I mean, here who have not been to school, but who speak so eloquently and who are full of wisdom. So this kind of, Kelly mentioned that that's collective memory. That's the collective memory of Africa, or that's the collective memory of the oral tradition. Not me, but my community, or my people, most of the time. That's the kind of collective bio, but not individual. Thank you for your question.
Probably have time for one more if anybody else has a question.
So you've been now here in Bellingham for a full quarter, almost 12 weeks. And I'm just curious if you have any observations, things that you've learned that you didn't expect being here. What will you take from this experience when you go back to Senegal?
Thank you for your question. I think my experience of Bellingham is a huge one. Maybe if I tell somebody that I have spent 3 months at Bellingham at Western Washington, they may say, oh, that's short. That's not short. I think it represents a lot in my life experience. In a very short period, I have come to discover a lot of great things I have never discovered. Number one thing, the first impression is I have never been to the West Coast of the US. I'm more familiar with the East Coast. And this is my first time to set foot on the West Coast. And Bellingham is really amazing. Remember one day when we went around visiting, I told you, wow, I'm sure if I spent a lot of time here, I would write a lot of books. That's what I told you. I find inspiration. I had the chance to go and visit a lot of things. We went to Mount Baker, we went around in Fairhaven. There are a lot of things that reminds me my childhood. I was in rural areas, so maybe I experienced a lot of things, but I did not have that inspiration. I don't know. When I came to Bellingham, I found a lot of experience. What is sure is if I had spent here one more semester, I would write a book, that's sure. I would write another book, that's true. And that could be typically from an American setting, that's honest, that's really typical. It's good, a different setting, and it could inspire me to write different things, because I have seen very nice people, very positive things that I have learned in my life, and my connection with the university, the community, and everything. That's something great that's a value added in my life experience, academically, culturally, and socially. Thank you for your question.
Well, we're really glad that you came, and thanks for coming tonight. And thank you all for coming too. I think Alassane will sign books if you have them up here. And thanks, have a good rest of your night.
I would like really thank you to thank the audience. It's a very challenging day. It's raining, and when I picked my luggage, I told Christopher, oh, it's a very challenging day. I said, no worry, people in Bellingham are very familiar with it. So it means, that's true, that's cultural. If it was somewhere, people would say maybe because of the rain I could not make it, but you made it, so that's something great. So that's something typical, culturally it's typical. Somewhere in my country when it rains, nobody would show up. They would say, it's raining. So that's something great I have to appreciate, that's part of the heritage. And I appreciate the presence of my colleagues, my friends from everywhere, my students from Western. I appreciate so much, Kelly's collaboration despite your busy calendar. You have accepted to come and make it. And I also appreciate my mentor and host Christopher Wyeth, and I thanks a lot Village Books. And I thank you so very much for everything. And thank you to Western West. Thank you, everyone.